Welcome to Family Gamer TV. I'm with Daniel Sussman, is that right?
That is right.
And Matt Boch, and we're looking at Fantasia Music Evolved, as it's now called, I understand?
That is correct. You got it all right so far.
Cool, very good. So, your roles on the game?
So I'm the project director, and Matt is the creative director.
Mm-hmm. So creative director, that's music and art and...
Yeah, it's music, art, gameplay. Yep.
So I understand that you guys worked on Dance Central 3?
Actually, Matt was the project lead for Dance Central 3, and the last title that I worked on was Rock Band 3, actually. And then I've been working on kind of music motion prototypes and then sort of the early pre-production for Fantasia Music Evolved. We've been at this for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. So is this the main dance music game that Harmonix are working on for Connect, or are we to expect maybe Dance Central 4 to pop up at some point?
So I think, Matt said it best. There's a lot of gameplay in Dance Central 3, and I think we're very proud of that game. Mm-hmm. I view Fantasia Music Evolved as sort of the next sort of evolutionary leap in music gaming. It's not so much a dance game, it's more about creative agency. The really cool thing about the gameplay that we've been trying to develop around is, gameplay that's built on creative choice, that, you start with music that and then through gameplay you turn it into something that's your own, that you're always building, and the choices that you make are reflected back at you kind of environmentally and musically, artistically. It's sort of the calling card, I think, of Fantasia, a deep immersive connection with music, and that sort of ties back to the film in a really nice way.
Mm-hmm. And so does that mean the creative direction has to take a different sort of route because it's a different sort of game?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're not trying to create a really instructive experience like Dance Central. It's not choreography.
Which I'm pleased about because I just can't dance, so that's great.
Yeah, it's far more accessible. You don't need to move your entire body. It's all about, basically remix conducting. You're transforming songs with your movements. And while we do have a lot of members of the Dance Central team, members of the Rock Band 3 team working together, a lot of the people who are making the gesture vocabulary and all the sequencing for the songs worked on Dance Central. So they have a sense of rhythm, but it's up to your interpretation. You can do big movements, small movements, use either hand. It's a lot more flexible and a lot more free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's got just a degree of looseness to it, which would make it a bit better for a wider audience, perhaps a wider age range?
I think so. I mean, I view it as sort of a very interpretive UI. The UI is suggesting motion that you can then sort of, interact with the way that you like. And so, what I think is really cool about this, and we've seen this on the show floor actually, day in and day out, is people take about a half a song, maybe a full song, to really get to the point where they can play. And you compare that to sort of early Dance Central and Rock Band. Oh my God! Like watching people struggle with the drums, mm-hmm. It took a long time for them to just sort of understand the UI and then get the mechanics down, the actual motor skills to be able to play. And where I think we're trying to pioneer in is, we really want to create an interface that allows, that's approachable, that anybody can just walk up to and understand, and then yet, still make sure that there's a skill curve for that expert player, that there's a high ceiling in terms of, what a player can do when they've gotten really good at this game.
Mm-hmm. And so what a player can do, is that different on the Xbox One to the Xbox 360? How do those two games, because it's going to be on both platforms, understand, how do those games compare?
Well, really, what we're going after with the Xbox One is just, amazing graphical quality and, more reactivity, more visual polish, both in the particle effects and all the sort of reactions to your movements. Yeah. And in addition to that, we have the new Kinect camera for Xbox One, which has a wider field of view.
Which is what we're playing with here, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. Wider field of view, can be closer up to the camera. And when we start talking about our multiplayer features, it'll be far better for people whose living rooms are a little tight. Mm-hmm.
So that being close to the camera, that's something that as you've developed the Xbox One, you can say is an actual reality?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. It's, I think just in terms of the fidelity of the tracking and the quality of the tech and the quality of the camera itself, it affords a lot of opportunities for us to sort of, ease the player in and make sure that we are sort of looking at the space you're playing in and making adjustments as necessary.
And so I gather you guys will obviously have a music background, being involved in a music game. How does that work sort of with your day-to-day job, and how do you feed that into the game?
So, my musical practice these days is like a crazy remix project. I take like different genres of bass music and like make reggaeton remixes of Mortal Kombat theme songs. So in a lot of ways, the gameplay reflects, the thing that I think should be happening with music. Just take all sorts of different parts of it, create new experiences, create songs and make them yours. And so, I see, my musical practice as very similar ultimately to what the gameplay is like, and I'm working on remixes for the game. Tons of people on the team are working on remixes for the game. Chris, our producer over at Disney, is working on a remix for the game. It's great to have a studio full of super talented musicians, and all the work they're doing for the game is so much more exciting to them, I think, than making Rock Band authoring. And so we're getting just gorgeous reinterpretations of classic songs, and the ability to just go and say, I'm going to make jazz version of Kimbra Settle Down, I'm going to make a 80s metal version of Bohemian Rhapsody, is an absolute joy. And then to give the player the ability to mix and match those different remixes is a blast.
So we talked a lot about Fantasia, but we haven't talked an awful lot about the Disney side of it, and how that Fantasia film sort of feeds into the game.
Sure.
So how does that work?
So, I think we spent about a year working with Disney to define the experience and figure out how we might connect kind of our aspirations from an interactive standpoint back to the film, which by definition is sort of a passive experience. And, one of the avenues there was, we got basically open access to the Disney archives, where we were able to read through these story notes between Walt and his animation team, Walt and his music team.
So that's quite privileged access. Not everyone will get to see that.
No, and it was magical, right? We learned all sorts of things, not just about how Fantasia was made, but why. And Walt was, he was trying to do something very innovative. Fantasia was designed to be this ever-evolving platform, and it never came to pass, right? It's it was a film that was released in 1940, and that was sort of the way that everybody sort of understands it now. But Walt's vision was to sort of continually create new segments and then repackage them in with the film, and so it would continually reflect the sort of media and art and sort of culture of the day. And
so DLC?
Basically, yes, And so that posed this great question for us. What if that had actually continued as Walt planned? And, where would we be today with today's technology, with today's music, with today's style and culture? And
that sounds great, yeah.
Yeah, when Disney approached us, they were adamant. We're not making Fantasia the movie, the game. And while we do have plenty of elements from the original film all throughout the game, you're under the tutelage of the master sorcerer Yen Sid, you're becoming a sorcerer's apprentice, you're pretty much taking on Mickey's role, and the overall narrative is very similar to the narrative of that short. We wanted to, be true to the spirit of Walt's vision, not, just try and reinterpret a thing that's 70 years old and try and make that seem relevant to today's audiences. What we want to do is give people the experience that you might have had if you were in a theater in 1940 seeing the first surround sound film with unique color process, the first, film that combined abstract and representational animation with classical music.
And it feels like there's the tension here of a core gamer who is used to Harmonix doing a Dance Central quite hardcore game. So what would you say to that audience about Fantasia, who they maybe haven't bought into it yet? What do they need to understand about it?
Well, I think the performance gameplay is actually quite difficult, right? You can do it in tons and tons of different ways. You can interpret it in whatever way you like. Similarly to playing DDR, you're like, you know which buttons you need to push, but how you move your feet to that place is really up to you. And similarly here, the types of gestures you can do are pretty varied, but ultimately you need to be moving in the right direction at the right time to get high scores. And so there's all sorts of optimal pathing that you can do, multipliers you can build up, and score competitions. That is part of the game, equally as much as the creative aspects are. And so while it may not reek of a hardcore game, certainly it's a unique and new thing. And I think for any gamer, you don't want to play the same game over and over again. You want to go and see things that are legitimately brand new. And this is one of those games. This is one of those games that is unlike anything else that you can play. And I think for that reason, it should appeal to anyone who just loves games.
Great, that sounds really good. I can't wait to see a bit more of the game, to have a dance as well. And thanks for your time.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Yeah.